Well, the all-new series Alien Encounters, Fact or Fiction dissects the truth behind real-life extraterrestrial experiences, and it premieres on Discovery Channel and Max tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, and stars UFO expert Chrissy Newton, who joins us on Canada Now. Chrissy, a pleasure having you on the show.
Good to see you as well, and thank you.
Oh, thank you. Now, you are one of two UFO experts on the show, Mitch Horowitz being the other, and you are also a partner of The Debrief, a news media outlet that focuses on UAPs and science and tech, and you're an accomplished journalist, host of your award-winning podcast, Rebelliously Curious with Chrissy Newton. How did Alien Encounters happen for you? And I'm talking about the television show.
Yeah, for sure. I should say as well, it will air in Canada now later on. Unfortunately, it's just been pushed back, but it will air.
Okay.
You get the Discovery Channel in the States. If anybody's watching this or listening, I should say,
yeah.
They can get it later on. But it will be in Canada later this summer.
Okay.
They just changed the programming about a week ago. But with that said, what ended up happening is I've been into UFOs since I've been a little girl. And this is a counterculture. Some people might argue and fight me on this and say it's a subculture, but I think it is a counterculture. It's a movement of people that are trying to advocate for change and transparency within any of legislation, anything around this UAP topic. So over the course of my life, since I was a little girl, and especially in my 20s, I would go to conferences. These are not conferences with tinfoil hats, as some people would like to say. There's tons of academic ones with scientists and tons of different people that are looking at this from an academic perspective. And when I was in there meeting people, you end up finding yourself in this counterculture. And it is a mix of people. It's a mix of producers. It's a mix of scientists, people that are involved in technology, anthropologists, professors. There's so many people, former government. I don't think I've met so many people in former government in my entire life that have worked at the Pentagon, which is wild. So throughout that, people knowing my work and being able to, thankfully, be able to research and report on this subject, that's where Discovery found me and Best Productions.
Well, and great, and I'm glad they did. And does it feel like this is still like a taboo subject or something that is blown off? I don't get the sense that it may have been at one point, but I don't get the sense that it is nowadays, at least not as much. Do you?
No, I'm glad you said that, because I don't think so too.
Yeah.
Some people would say that they still think that this topic is laughable, but if you're laughing at the Pentagon saying that UFOs exist and we don't know what this 1% is, then, you're laughing at pretty experienced people within defense. So yes, I would say since the 80s and the 90s, tabloids really put in a lot of ridicule and stigma against the UFO topic and made it laughable and would make fun of it. Comedians would, but it's changed drastically since that time. And it's changed since the Cold War and during the 60s. When this topic was really hot as well. So it's evolved, and for sure people still laugh at it, but not as many. A lot of people from all different areas of the world are taking it more seriously than ever before. Well,
those that would laugh at the subject, then obviously they have a scientific explanation for everything that has occurred to this point. So I'd love to meet the people that have all the answers. You and Mitch, you set up shop at a watering hole in Roswell, New Mexico, and you listen to firsthand accounts from individuals who claim to have experienced something that they just can't explain. How do you dissect what's being reported?
That's a great question. We're talking to people that have had different encounters from the first and the fourth kind. So there's a spectrum of different people we talk to. So the way that I get to dissect this and look at it is from a journalistic perspective. I'm very open-minded. Like you said, I don't know everything. My job is to help figure this out and follow the clues and be able to report back to people about if people are lying, if there's cover-ups, and if what we assume to be potentially real too that we can't figure out. So, I'm not allowed to be biased. That's not my job. You know this, Jeff, in this media space. My job is to report the facts. But also testimonies are very important. We use something called the 5 observables that Jay Stratton from the UFO task force that was in the Pentagon. It was an unclassified group of people that were studying the UFO phenomenon. And he came up with these 5 observables that look at, anti-propulsion, transmedium, cloaking. There's all these different things that we can use to identify if it is potentially a UAP. And these are things that we don't even have an inventory from the military or Canadian Armed Forces that we could say, hey, that's a jet. These are things that are not possible that we even have within our own technology that could travel that fast or even cloak itself per se. So we have those. And then I take it a step further and look at it from another perspective of, do we have photo and video evidence? Is this a mass sighting? So I try to do my best with my own type of observables along with then the UFO task force observables as well to then come to some form of opinion or conclusion of what it potentially could be a UFO or not. But I want people to remember this is my opinion too. It doesn't mean that it's a fact. Facts are not opinions. So I think when we're watching this, we have to be mindful that Mitch and I are using our own abilities and our skills of how we dissect the world and see it. And then if it potentially is, because something that I'm saying is a UFO potentially could not be, and the other way around as well.
Right. So you two are the experts. You and Mitch are the experts. And there would be many that would have felt that they experienced something extraordinary. They don't know what it is. They don't have an explanation, but they obviously don't have the expertise that you have. So in collecting all the stories that you would for the show that wouldn't necessarily make it to air, but in collecting all of those stories, would you then be able to offer a simple explanation for most of the stories? Because to us, it would be like, what was that? And then to you and Mitch, given your expertise and your experience, you can say, well, it was this. It ended up being this. This is based on my experience and data, what have you, technology that you have on hand. You would be able to explain what we can't explain. Do you find that more often than not?
It's a great question, too. Not that it's more often or not, because these are just a section of case studies, right, that we're looking at in people's experiences. So it's hard to say if it's more or not. I think it's pretty much down the middle, I would imagine. But I don't want to give any spoilers, too, away. I would let people to watch and have their own opinions. But remembering that there is no such thing as like a UFO expert, even though we are named at it because it's the easiest thing for media to do, which makes sense. And we understand that because this is an area of study. It's an ology. So it takes a lot of people to look at data and come together and study this phenomena. I'm lucky because I do get to look at data and I get to look at other experts that have reviewed it and have come back. I can't know everything. It's almost impossible for one person to know physics, anthropology, religion, theology, looking at, right? It's impossible. So I do my best from my lens as a journalist to be able to say if it's a UAP or not with other expert data and listening to testimony. Some things we might not have video evidence, but we have a really compelling testimony. We have a really compelling location too, that we can say this is a UFO hotspot. So there's so many different variables that could point to it being a UAP or not. But again, that can be controversial, right? So again, I try to do my best along, I think Mitch does as well, where we try to come to some form of conclusion, and not everybody's happy about that. Some people are relieved, and then some people are like, well, what does this mean to me? And what does this mean to my life? And what do I experienced? And maybe what I thought it was and it wasn't. So it's a step further than just saying it's a UFO. It's looking at how attach themselves to this subject and what it means to them and how it can change their life or their perspective of the world that they live in. So it's more than just it's a UFO.
Well, Chrissy, what happens when and if you determine a real-life alien encounter has been made? What happens then?
Well, alien encounter, I can never say that. And I would never say that this is an alien because it's a non-human identity, right? It's an NHI, as we call them, non-human intelligence. And non-human intelligence could be anything. We could lump the ghost phenomenon as well too, but I can say that it's not human, right? So I could potentially maybe say that sounds like it's an NHI, but nobody even knows what NHI is. It's so brand new as a terminology that has come from David Grush, a former counterintelligence officer that has come forward through a whistleblower program where he's talked about, having back knowledge working for the government, just if people aren't familiar with David Grush. So I can't say it's an alien, but I can say that sounds like it is non-human. And then what does that mean? Well, it takes science and technology and a lot of smart people, smarter than me, to answer those questions over the years.
Well, the first episode is said to have left you and Mitch speechless when a geologist believes that he may have unearthed the most important piece of evidence to ever come from a UFO crash site. What would be like, does anything stand out for you in your career in what would be the strangest, most unexplained story that you've ever heard?
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. When it comes to having crash material, we have to test things. There's experts in that. But looking at that one person specifically in the show, he is a geologist. He's an expert in his own space.
Yeah.
So that right there is so important. He has his records. He has so much education around it. So he's curious. It doesn't mean he doesn't make a mistake either. But that area is specifically in Roswell, in the crash site. And I was fortunate enough myself. I got to go with Toby from the Daily Roswell. That's a news outlet in Roswell. And they took me to the crash site after filming. So I was in that area where one of our experiencers said that he found something. And so I've been to that place. I ended up getting to experience too. It's so vast. And we have to remember that Roswell crash site is allegedly just where it's a debris site, not the whole thing crashed. It ended up apparently having debris, and it might have skipped somewhere else too. That's what folklore and legends tell us, right? And what we've heard from other testimonies from witnesses that have had first accounts at Roswell. And there's not many of them alive today. I think there might be only one person that's left. Not many. But I say for people to watch it. Roswell is an amazing city. I love the people there. They care about this subject so much. And they want answers too. So it's a fascinating subject, and it's a fascinating episode as well.
We've only got about a minute here, Chrissy. I could talk to you all day, to be honest. Do you ever go somewhere and come back feeling changed? Like, this was the spot of such and such. Do you ever go to that spot and then come back feeling different?
I have. That's actually one of the best questions anyone's asked me, Jeff. I have. There's something called a paradigm shift. And I have been in Washington where I've sat with people and I've had dinners with them that are former government and have blown my mind. I've heard whistleblower testimony that has come out that I feel is disinformation as well, which is interesting. So yes, I have come back from many different moments and reporting moments where I've been like, even though I've been in this topic since I'm a little girl, I've been like, well, what? And I have to start again too. And come to terms with what I'm learning and if it's real or not. And if this is disinformation, there's so much to it. So yeah, I've done it many times, and it does play with your head a little bit, that's for sure. But you always you find common ground, or keep your feet on the ground a little bit more. It doesn't affect you as much as it possibly could. Well, that's how I look at it.
Very well. Yeah. And I could see that. Very excited about the all new series, Alien Encounters, Fact or Fiction. We'll have to wait a bit in Canada, but in the U.S., it premieres on Discovery Channel and Max tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Chrissy Newton, great of you to join us, and I love the work that you're doing, and I'm especially excited about the work that you're doing on this show in particular. It's great that you get to join us, for us, of course. Thank you so much for this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Great to be here.
All right. Thank you. There is Chrissy Newton.